Hello friends, Glage back, and the patch notes for the upcoming Guilty Gear Strive Season 3 have just dropped. So I want to make a quick video going over the main things people would be interested in on this channel. We're going to go over the overall system mechanics changes. They're pretty massive, way more than I expected. So they're going to have direct impact on everyone, not just Anji players or those of you who are considering picking up Johnny, or any character for that matter. So we'll go over those, and then I want to talk about Anji's changes specifically. So there's quite a bit to go over here. I'll do a more detailed version of this once the patch is live and I can show you things in action. But I just want to give you my initial thoughts and kind of prep for this upcoming Thursday when we'll get to play with this new stuff for real. But let's just get into it so I don't take too much of your time. So, game mechanic changes. New mechanics have been added using the burst gauge. We knew this was coming. So they've changed the properties of how burst works. The burst gauge is now going to fill up faster than it did before. This makes sense. The new mechanics are going to require using the burst gauge, which means you're going to be using burst far more often. If it filled up at the same rate, the new mechanics wouldn't be able to be utilized all that often, and that's not something they want to do. They clearly want these to be a big part of the game. So let's go over these new burst meter resource mechanics. So they are calling them Wild Assault and Deflect Shield, which I believe were named in the trailer. So Wild Assault, a lunging attack performed at the cost of 50% of the burst gauge. So both these new mechanics are going to cost half the burst gauge meter to be able to be utilized. If you don't have 50% burst, you don't get to use these. They're just locked out. So, similar to special moves, it can be performed by canceling normal moves. So this basically just operates as, honestly, kind of like a baby Fujin. Not the same, obviously, because Fujin has its own properties, but it's going to basically be a thing where you cancel into it and you rush forward, probably with a lot of frame advantage so that, you know, people can't just smack you out of it. So, I think the obvious comparison is going to be stuff like Drive Rush and Drive Cancel from Street Fighter 6, since that's topical right now. We'll have to see what kind of frames this has on it. It does note that on both hit and block, this attack drains some of your opponent's burst gauge, which is interesting. And it also notes that holding down the dust button will power up the attack in exchange for extending the startup. So, two things here. This taking away the opponent's burst gauge and being able to hold this basically means this is like a modified version of an offensive blitz. The blitz mechanic from Guilty Gear Xrd. I have a video on that if you want the details. But the long and the short of it is, it looks like this is going to help create burst meter wars, basically, which is kind of interesting. It's not quite on the level of something like the grid system from Under Night, but that is going to create a new bit of important resource management on both sides that should be interesting. If you can use one of these and lock your opponent out from using the burst mechanics, that's probably going to be pretty huge. So we'll see how these play around with Wild Assault. It also notes that it's not a universal attack. Characters will have varying versions of Wild Assault. They say they fall into one of three categories. One, attacks with fast startup, easy to use in combos. I would suspect that characters who are a little bit speedier, you know, your Milias, your Chips of the world, probably going to have something like that. Two, attacks with Guard Crush effect on block to create advantage. So that could be anybody. I wouldn't be surprised if Anji's is one that creates a Guard Crush situation. That would make sense for his kit. We'll see what they offer. The third one, attacks with invincibility frames. So that's really interesting. It says for the first two types, so the fast startup or the Guard Crush, Wild Assault can be canceled into other actions on hit or block. So what that means is, it sounds like we would be able to do something like normal Wild Assault, which takes us in. So we'll just use the dash cancel on close S as a you know, placeholder here. So Wild Assault, and you could go into like Fujin or maybe even more normals. We'll have to see. That's going to be really interesting. So a robust mechanic to say the least. Probably going to open up a lot of new pressure options, because now you can use that in conjunction with Roman cancels. So pressure is going to get a lot more layers to it. Whether or not they're good layers, we'll have to see just how strong this mechanic is. The secondary mechanic, Deflect Shield, which to me is just a new way of calling it blitz. But special method of blocking performed at the cost of 50%. Cost the same as Wild Assault. Blocking an attack while Deflect Shield is active will create significant distance with the opponent. So if you block this, it's basically like ultra faultless defense. So if we have our dummy here, let's see. So let's have you block and let's have you faultless defense. Obviously, faultless defense is pretty good already, right? It pushes you out way faster. You get a couple jabs and get pushed out. It sounds like this is going to be like ultra faultless defense. So a single jab and you might be all the way back to like this range on a single hit. It can do the same with projectiles, so it can push people out when they use projectiles in their strings, or if they try to steal turns by putting a projectile on you. And it says it can block both low and overhead attacks while active. So it is a universal blocking system. So it works, ironically, like Anji's spin. There is no low, high, mid. When that shield is active, it will block all of it, which is good for simplicity's sake. It means you don't have to guess. In Xrd, if you wanted to blitz a low attack, you had to do low blitz, and low blitz would not block anything but lows. This is a much more streamlined version of that. They note, while it's an extremely powerful defensive option, it leaves you in a vulnerable counter hit state. Gee, Anji players wouldn't know anything about that. I can't imagine how that would feel. The second half of the move has that counter hit state on it. Since it costs burst gauge, you'll be unable to psych burst, so you set yourself up to take major damage from a pummage combo if it's baited. Obviously, that's pretty common sense. So, interesting new mechanics. I'm gonna have to play with them in motion to give you a true assessment, but that's what we can look forward to. So, there are other changes to note. So, the burst gauge, they note, is going to refill faster. It now increases faster when you have positive bonus, incentivizing the wall break mechanic even more. It increases a set amount when you are wall stuck. So you're going to get a chunk of burst gauge for being wall stuck, which is interesting. Probably is going to make it harder for characters who have decent resets in the corner, which Anji kind of does. Instead of ending combos and wall sticks, I've noticed a lot of the high-end Anjis do stuff like finish off a wall bounce from jump D and do, like either low kick or close S into butterfly to keep from breaking the wall and just maintain that distance. So it looks like now there's going to be more ways to burst out of that. So basically, there's just more opportunities to gain burst. They want burst to be a constant meter that has constant use. So it's just going to be filling up a lot. So I guess get your burst baits and all your related burst mechanic baits on deck, because they're probably going to be needed going forward. Other changes. So the effects of gold and blue burst have been changed as well, in addition to the burst gauge itself. Gold burst is no longer a full tension gauge on hit. It instead just activates positive bonus. This is a massive nerf to gold burst. This actually shocks me quite a bit. That is... Gold burst has been, you gold burst, you get a full bar. It's been that way since burst was introduced into the series. So that's something. The argument they have is that they felt it's too potent of a comeback method. I don't know that I agree with that personally, but offense does become so much more grimy and so much more hard to deal with when your opponent has meter to work with because of the Roman cancel system and everything else. But that's kind of always been part of Guilty Gear. And I've always felt like you're making a big bet when you gold burst. And if you hit that bet, you need to be rewarded. That positive bonus, that's not a big bet. Don't get me wrong, positive bonus is good. You can do some really silly things in positive bonus. It's not an instantly full tension gauge. So that is a big, big nerf. I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out in practice. But that's going to be noticeable. That's a big change. Blue burst has now been changed so it reaches across the entire screen. So obviously I'm going to gold burst because I'm not in hit stun. So let's just, that'll work. All right, come hit me. Of course I burst too early because I'm smart like that. Let's see. So if I just have you, that'll work. Okay, so Anji comes up and hit me. I do blue burst, it hits there, right? If I push him out and then and then blue burst. Doesn't reach, right? That has now changed. Blue bursts are now full screen. I actually saw some footage of this at the event in Europe over the weekend. You can burst things like Happy Chaos now at max range. It can still be baited. There are still ways to bait it, but now it's just the entire screen. My guess is this is literally a direct call out to characters like Happy Chaos and Asuka, and characters that are so good at playing at range, and so they just kind of get to ignore the blue burst mechanic because they don't have to deal with it. So gold burst is massively nerfed, blue burst is massively buffed, so I guess we do have somewhat of equivalent exchange there, but these are interesting changes. They are taking some swings for the fences with this version, so whatever you think you know about Guilty Gear Strive, be ready. Changes are coming, and we got more of them. So the next one, this shocks me even more than the Gold Burst change. So weight. Weight has always been a thing in Guilty Gear. It's been a thing in a lot of anime games. Heavier characters fall faster, their gravity increases quicker when they're comboed, etc., etc. They are doing away with weight classes. Every character in the game now has the same weight. So this is interesting because now some character-specific stuff no longer exists. Other than hitbox things, there's still going to be character-specific things because of the sizes of hitboxes and the way they work, so it doesn't completely remove character-specific combos. But something it does do is, let's say you get, like, I need you to not block, Anji, thank you. The juicy starter, right? If you get this in the corner, obviously that's a pipe dream, but bear with me. If you get this on the corner on a light character, you're getting a full co-loop, right? Now, it sounds like there's probably almost no character in the game that's going to be easily triple co-looped. I know that's not necessarily the ideal combo anymore, but it does just change the calculus a lot. Obviously, this is going to be a big buff against characters like Potemkin, Nagoriyuki, Gold Lewis, your big boys now will float longer, which makes combos on them easier. For some characters, it might make combos harder. It's hard to say. I don't know every character's combo structure in and out, especially at this point in the game. But doing away with weight is a pretty big change. That's a big deal. So I guess they just want to homogenize combos, not make you worry about character-specific stuff. I don't know. I'm ambivalent on this change. Get back to me after I play with it more and see how I feel about Potemkin not weighing 1 billion pounds. We'll see how I feel about that. But yeah, everyone weighs the same. The last major system mechanic change, damage scaling and counter effects. So this is going to pertain to us in just a moment. So it is now more challenging to get major damage from moves that are powerful neutral tools as well as low-risk frame traps. So what they note is 3 major bullet points. 1, increase base damage scaling on moves with forward movement. Well, that's unfortunate. Removed counter effect for special moves that can follow into other special moves. Well, that's unfortunate. Reduce the damage of overdrives and command grabs. Our overdrives aren't that good anyway. So it says there are exceptions to the general changes. The damage potential from close range remains, with the damage of methods of approach reduced. So basically what they're saying is that if you start combos with close S or crouching S or stand heavy or whatnot, you still are probably going to get juicy damage. If you counter hit someone with a frame trap on close S, they're going to pay for it. What is now different is that taking a bet on something like a long-range Fujin is not going to get you a juicy counter hit anymore, and any special moves that have sequences or Rekka type actions apparently are going to be heavily nerfed, and I can tell you from reading Anji's notes, that is very true. So those are all the system mechanic changes. There's also some minor things. Let's see here. So Roman Cancel no longer drains tension gauge if canceled before the time freeze effect. So fast Roman Cancel now can save even more meter. That's not nothing. Yellow Roman Cancel now hits opponents who have strike or throw invincibility. So yellow Roman Cancel is better. My guess is this is to offset the power of the new burst defensive mechanic a little bit and make it feel like YRC still has a reason. I still don't think YRC is going to be very good when you have these other toys to play with. We will see. Fixed an issue with Faultless Defense where it inflict knockback in the wrong direction. Yeah, okay. Finishing Blow now grants positive bonus on hit. Finishing Blow. Is that referring to round end? So you get positive bonus on... There's something I'm missing there. Not quite sure what that means. We'll find out. Adjusted some hurt boxes for consistency. Changed the weight. Changed some visual effects of counter hits. Okay, so there's your rundown of the overall system mechanics. Now let's get what I know you were all here for. Let's talk about Anji. So, the overview. Anji has a new follow-up move. This is what we saw in the trailer called Midare. Is a Final Fantasy IV Sam main. I approve. Cool. Not bad. This is available while withstanding an attack during spin. So, now we have access to an actual move if we catch someone with auto guard. This makes him better able to challenge opponents' jabs and projectiles. So, apparently now you're not just going to be able to try and bait out spin with jabs and hope you just take a throw. We apparently have a way to do something that is more threatening. So that's good. Notes that he's still going to get better damage with heavier attacks. So if you spin and then hit someone who, you know, swung into it with stand heavy, you get a close S starter. That's good. How good is Midare going to be? We're going to have to see what it affects and what it beats and what it doesn't beat and what he gets off it for combos. Do we get meterless confirms on counter hit? Do we have to spin meter? Or is it just going to be super, super annoying? Don't know. We'll find out in a couple days. The other overview point. The position Anji leaps to during fan needles can now be changed by inputting left or right. So when we do fan needles currently, we go exactly the same distance, right? We always go basically straight up and it is what it is. Now, apparently we're going to be able to steer this a little bit. We're going to be able to either move further forward or move backwards. The backwards change could be very good. There's a lot of characters that can just disrespect fan needles by just jumping it and going after you. This might make that harder to do. If nothing else, it's going to make it harder to track Anji and just punish him for trying it. So that's a buff. There's absolutely nothing bad about having more maneuverability on one of our few plus frame options. So that's good. It's something. I still wish this was a projectile and not a ground-based attack, you know, that doesn't have a hitbox until it hits the ground, but we'll take what we can get. So, all right, now let's go over the change notes. These are going to sound very scary. It's going to sound harsh because it is, but stick with me till the end of this for an explanation, all right? So let's start out. So forward heavy. Increased wall break value. So this is now going to cause more wall damage. Probably to make it harder to do resets and other things like that. I think they are really trying to make it so you have to really cut combos short if you don't want a wall stick or wall break, which makes sense. They're adding more ways to get more burst. This all, like, the plan and the theory behind this is all kind of adding up. Are these good changes? Don't know. Again, we're going to have to see this in motion and in actual matches to get a good feel for it, but this now incurs more wall damage. That could be useful sometimes. That might mean there are combos where this helps us get a wall break and potentially a kill. So, I'm not going to call that a nerf or buff, to be determined, to be perfectly honest. So, Fujin. Remove the counter effect and increase base damage scaling. So now that doesn't happen anymore. Even if you hit someone in counter hit state, that's all you're getting. This is all that happens. Also, if you start a combo with Fujin, you are going to do less damage. It has more scaling on this. That feels bad. That's a nerf. No matter how you slice it, that is a nerf. That's a big nerf. Kind of stings. Fan needles, we talked about. You can now alter the distance. Hop after Fujin. Reduce recovery. This could be very good. If this actually has, you know, some fair recovery on it instead of the absolute sitting duck we are when we try to use this move, might be good. Maybe this offers more mix, more maneuverability, more ways to get throws and other things. That's a buff. We take those. That's nothing wrong with that. Nagia. Remove the counter effect. Increase damage scaling. Same thing as Fujin. So no more counter hits on this. or, well, you can get a counter hit, but you're not getting the counter hit stop, and you're going to do less damage if you start a combo with this. Okay? Reen, remove the counter hit. This now means you can no longer combo off Reen without spending meter. It is now literally going to be impossible to get a starter with Reen. You are going to have to spend meter. Doesn't feel great. It does say, however, that Reen no longer... Or it doesn't say Reen has reduced damage scaling, so Reen combos are not going to do less damage if you do spend a Roman Cancel. So, that's something. But, yeah, basically, Fujin and its follow-ups can no longer create big counter hits. There is nothing to be gained here. I have thoughts on this, and they might not be the thoughts you're thinking. So, again, let me go through the rest of these changes, and I'll give you an overall thought process at the end here. So, Ko. Increased base damage scaling. So now combos started with Ko are going to do less damage. Doesn't feel good. That's a nerf. That's the only change to it. Added Midare. The input for the new move where we're going to bonk people with fish is 214p. So quarter circle back punch after spin is activated. Pretty simple. Kind of surprised it's not a single button input, considering Anji's old auto guard inputs, except for Kacho Fugetsu, were single button inputs. But, I mean, it's quarter circle back. Not asking a lot. Pretty simple. Last two things. Kacho Fugetsu, reduced damage, and Issei Ogi, also reduced damage. That was a system mechanic change. All overdrives are apparently going to do less damage. So that's a nerf, but that is a universal nerf. So that doesn't really change much. So, okay, where do we start? Obviously, getting the new move out of spin is killer. If we're going to be able to more regularly challenge buttons like jabs and kicks, stuff with less recovery on it, and projectiles, that's very good for us. If it has like full invulnerability on it, that could very, very change how people have to fight Anji. If it's like full invulnerability and has a good hitbox and consistently gets Anji through things, that's going to be good. That's going to frustrate people. The changes to Fujin, I'm sure everyone is like, oh my god, they hate this character. They're not letting him have anything. He gets no big counter hits. Damage on Ko is down. Damage on Fujin is down. Yes, it is. It absolutely is. Here's the thing. I glanced through most of the characters looking for if everyone got similar changes, right? Across the board, characters do not get to do big counter hits off their specials anymore. For example, like Soul does not get a counter hit off of what used to be Riot Stomp. Not Riot Stomp. Bandit Revolver. That no longer gives counter hit. So what they have done across the board is stuff is going to do less damage, and they are encouraging you to continue to look for your big starters with close S, crouching S, stand heavies, etc. They want you to start combos with the big buttons if you want big damage, and if you don't start it with big damage or you start it with moves that allow you to maneuver in neutral, you're going to get less reward for that. That appears to just be a flat-out universal change across the board. How actually bad is this for Anji? So you might think doom and gloom hearing these changes. Getting no counter hits on Karamus like Reen and stuff, that kind of sucks, right? That's definitely not a good thing. I said this all the time when I was making videos for you all before, and I'm going to continue saying it. If Anji has to rely entirely on Fujin and Fujin follow-ups for his offense, he's never going to be a good character. These have all been mostly buffed over time, especially with the lower block stun on Fujin, the Kara options, the reduced recovery on Reen, the reduced recovery on Fujin. They have made the follow-ups not be complete and total garbage, which is a good thing. You want the core special move of the character to have value, right? It is going to change stuff with what kind of risks we take at range, because now doing something like this for hoping for the big hit on the end is way worse risk reward for us. This now feels very bad. Just searching for the big counter hit Fujin. And granted, that's already gotten worse because it doesn't launch on its own. But here's the thing. Charging Fujin has the spin attach. And now we have a move out of spin if people swing into it. That's not nothing. I need to know all the stats on Midare. I need to know, is it invulnerable? What's it like on block? What's it like on hit? What are our rewards off it? Is it just is it a get them away from us and that's it on regular hit? Is it a hard knockdown? Can we combo off it? Obviously, I'm going to need to test that to find out how good it is or is not. But in general, I do think how strong Anji is going to heavily be based on how good Midare is. How much more threatening is spin? How much more threatening is charge Ko with the spin behind it? How much more threatening is charge Fujin with the spin behind it? If that move is very good and it is a powerful tool, Anji is going to probably get better within the overall scope of the cast. That will be very, very powerful. That will have a lot of application. That will change how people feel about dealing with auto guard. It will make them more scared to have to deal with this, and that is a good thing. If that move is not good, Anji might be in big trouble, because one of the things this character has always had since this game launched is if he gets his big starter on you, Anji hurts, and he can usually hurt for very minimal meter investment or very reasonable meter investment. Now that might be a little bit harder to do, but I will say that for a character like Anji, who is not super mobile, his air dash is not super fast, his dash speed is not super fast, he has to take big risks to get in. One of the biggest problems in playing Anji is that sometimes it's just hard to get to your opponent, right? It's hard to get into close S range where we can enforce strike foe. It's hard to get into a range where you might be able to steal a turn with a butterfly or steal a turn with a spin. All those things now get easier for this character because of, one, better threat with spin if that move is good. Two, the wild assault mechanic, that could be good. That could be very, very good for Anji, because now, instead of having to rely on block strings that go into stuff like Fujin and praying your opponent doesn't know how to deal with it, or going into various roaming cancels, which roaming cancels are not cheap. That's not an easy thing to do. You don't have infinite meter. That could be very good for Anji. This might up his pressure game significantly. Now, the caveat is, of course, that's going to up the pressure game for a lot of characters significantly. So, do I think Anji is better or worse relative to the cast? I have absolutely no idea. Literally impossible to give you that information despite having the patch notes in front of my face. I have concerns, but again, they're probably not the concerns you might think. This is a big deal. Not getting counter hits off these things, that hurts. But again, that appears to be a universal thing. Special moves are just not going to be the, I got the juicy starter for most characters. There's a lot of changes. I have to go through everything. There's a lot of changes that I'm not even going to understand at face value because it's characters I haven't played a lot against. You know, characters basically from Testament on, I have not really played matches against. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more research to see how those play out. But this is a shakeup. And I don't just mean for Anji. I mean, this is a massive, massive, massive change to how Guilty Gear Strive plays. This is now a different game. And I'm not saying that to be dramatic or get people interested in clicking on the video. These changes are going to completely alter every facet of how this game is played. Neutral offense and defense now have been put in the blender, shaken up, and it's a brand new drink. So we will see how this plays out. I'm gonna refrain from trying to guess too much because it doesn't do us any good. Once the patch drops, probably in the middle of the night, Wednesday into Thursday morning, I will hop on immediately. I will do the typical testing you would expect of me because I am a graveyard gremlin and I will be able to do it right out the gate. And I will start giving you my thoughts and expect a lot of updates this week with how Anji's changes impact him, how they work in match flow, and I'm going to be messing with Johnny and see how I feel about that character as well. So, this is even more of a change than I thought we were going to get. These are some wild alterations to the formula for Guilty Gear Strive. So it is a new ball game, friends, so get ready. I'm going to stop blabbering for now. I will be back once we have the patch live and I can actually show you things in motion and we can talk at length about how stuff works there. So that's going to do it for now. Again, if you haven't checked out the comeback video, my update saying where I've been and what's going on, I am going to be regularly uploading again. I am playing Strive regularly again. Obviously, I wouldn't have taken time to make this if I wasn't. But most importantly to me is I am trying to make a little extra revenue off YouTube and more directly off my Patreon. If you like what I do on the channel, you have some extra money to toss to a content creator, and you want some neat little perks, feel free to check out the Patreon. It's in the link of all my descriptions. If you can help out, awesome. If you don't have it, I totally get it. The economy ain't great. And I'm never going to put my videos behind paywalls or anything, so don't feel obligated. Just throwing it out there because this is what I do for a living, and if I don't promote myself, well, it gets harder and harder to make a living. So you all know how that works. But anyway, I'm going to call that good for now. Get hype. I don't know what this is going to be. This is going to be one hell of a new experiment to move through, and quite frankly, we're probably not going to know for a few weeks exactly what Guilty Gear Strive Season 3 means and what it actually feels like, because there's a lot of depth and nuance to hash out with these new mechanics. So that's all I got. I will see you in a day or two for actual patch demonstration, and we'll go from there and see if Anji is going to feel like he's going to be playable or not. We'll find out. So as always, thanks for watching. Appreciate y'all. Be safe, be good to each other, and I will catch you all on the next one. So, peace out for now, everybody.